That's an attack on the body. Body, mind, and spirit are the three places that most of us get attacked. And the first attack usually comes from the body. That's the easiest way. You know, whole lot of us been waylaid by our bodies. I'll leave that alone. I'm sure you've already repented from that. The second challenge, Satan says, takes him to high mountains. Why don't you throw yourself off this mountain? Because it's written that his angels will grab you before you hit the ground. And Jesus says, no, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. That's a mental challenge, logic. Isn't it logical if you jump off here, they'll grab you before you hit the ground? The third challenge is an outright bribe. Satan uses the highest mountain and says, all this stuff here belongs to me. All these kingdoms in the world, they all belong to me. If you bow down and worship me, I'll give them to you. Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. Get out of my face. Okay? That's a challenge to spirit, a moral challenge. Taking a bribe is always about the morality. It's never about the money. It's the equivalent of you saying how much you're going to sell your soul for. Randy Duke Cunningham right now, former Congressman Cunningham, is probably thinking about that right now. He was living in style for a while. He was a Vietnam hero. I think the movie Top Gun was patting on his life. He in jail now. For a few, $1 million, maybe $2 million. His whole reputation gone because of the challenge to his morality. So what that story is talking about, if you can successfully ward off the challenges that come against you on the level of body, mind, and spirit, you'll be on your way then to being a son of God. It's after that point in the story that Jesus can then go on to be baptized by John the Baptist. John the Baptist, again, is another eponymous character. Okay? Most of the people in the Bible are eponymous characters. Think how sad it is. Most of our relatives spend all their time running around talking about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Abraham, Jesus, and John. They talk about those folk like they know them down the street.
I'm a witness.
And yet, and this is the sad part, and yet they have no concept of what's really being said. It'd be like if there is a heaven, and we get to heaven, God will put on the heavenly television screen and show you your whole life. At the end, the words come up, but you missed it. You lived your whole life, but you never understood why you were here in the first place. Now, part of what keeps me going is that I understand part of why I'm here. I'm not trying to worship Jesus. I'm trying to be like Jesus. And the good thing about mythology is that if you model yourself after the mythology, after the myth can be a myth and can still give you power. If I live like Jesus, it don't matter whether there was a Jesus. No. If I live like Miss Jane Pittman, it don't matter if she never existed. I will align myself with a set of principles that comes out of mythology, and I will in fact achieve what the myth was organized to help me achieve. So, now I don't want you all to be going out next week, writing little stories and burying them in the ground and whatnot. But if you do, check with a whole lot of folks first so your story be tight. Otherwise, they'll bust you on 7 o'clock news. Yes, sir. Where's the mic?
Cut it on when you turn it on.
No, I just want to say, I know I struggle with that. Even at 38 years of age, I still don't know why I'm here. And even when I was watching on a program the other night on, I think it was TV Land, and of course Donna Ross was singing, "Do you know where you're going to?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like, what your life is showing you?" And I can still remember myself on a school bus back in middle school and saying, I still do not know.
Well, I can give you a hint. You got 2 daughters, right?
Yes.
Start there.
Yeah.
How many folks here have grand? You know, we don't like the food in the cafeteria. It's cold. You know, it's not appealing. You know, I want to write a petition. My mom said, okay. You know, helped write a petition. She's 10. Took it to school. Her fellow 5th grade students all signed it. Half of the 6th grade students signed it. Other half was scared they were going to graduate. See how early that stuff starts getting on you?
Those were the Negroes.
Yeah, those Negroes wouldn't sign it, you know. The principal was so impressed by it, she sent a downtown superintendent. Superintendent came from downtown to the school, praised her in front of the students, number 1, and changed the cafeteria food, number 2.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So those are small things. But I'm persuaded, you know, my youngest grandson, who's 5, I hope the white supremacists get themselves together before we come along, because he gonna give them no tea for the fever. Yes, sir. Give the microphone.
Thank you. I would like to speak to his question in terms of, if I understood you correctly, you're still asking why you're here.
Yes.
And from my experience, looking at indigenous societies, experiences I've had with people, for example, in your indigenous societies, there's elders or people who have gifts who can read the energy coming off your body. Normally, they'll do that when you're around 12 years of age. And at that point, they can determine what gifts you have been given. And I like to speak, when I speak of gifts, as most of you know in here, we all have been given gifts. I use the term creator. However, coming through this system of which Gerald is speaking of, you're not told that. But yet the game that you're in, if you move into the government, you move into corporate America, you will find that they're using anthropologists and others, people with that discipline that they've taken from the society that you're speaking of, to determine what you're capable of doing. It's being done in a very sophisticated way. You can go into a job, and I think I may have mentioned this before, and they will look at your astrological chart to see if you can be put in with a team of people who have been charted or tasked to accomplish something for that corporation. So if you don't know about astrology, if you don't get your chart read, you can't play in that game.
Yeah.
And this is real. I'm not speaking of this is happening.
You don't know what they see.
Pardon me?
You don't know what they see.
Exactly. Yeah. So I say to you, and if you want to talk later, we can do that. There are people around here who can do what you're asking, or not what you're asking, but help you in terms of determining what your gifts are. They'll read it and they'll say, well, maybe you should be a writer, you should be this. And then there's people who periodically get their charts read because energy changes.
At different stages of your life, you're different places.
Yeah. So don't feel frustrated. They're out there, just things have been hidden from. And this is what Gerald's been giving us, helping us with the keys. That's the way I look at
Yeah.
it.
In ancient African societies, very often you have several names as you went through life. Because over a certain period of years, your mission now changes. That's why in the Bible, a certain character goes through an experience, and his name is changed. Okay? My brother said something very important. Again, we live in a system which is in opposition to the way we were normally trained. In a European school setting, they operate with a concept called tabula rasa, blank slate. They believe you're born empty. The job of the educator then is one of filling you up from outside. The system therefore is designed to facilitate that. So when you go told, sit down, shut up, and do your own work. You know, my college professor told me, I got mine. You got yours to get. Okay? We've heard these things. That comes out of the way educators have been trained. So in the European system, the teacher's in the front, you sit in little rows going back, there's bright kids in the first row, the dumb kids in the back row. Everybody know that. Yeah, now that makes sense. You know, the dumb kids probably need more help. Put them in the front. But that's not what the system does. Now, you choose what you want to be based upon how much money you're going to make.
That's right.
In the American system, you choose what you want to be based on how much money you want to make. The African system comes at a whole different concept. They say you're born like an egg, like a seed, with everything you need already inside of you. The job of the teacher, therefore, is not to put anything into you, but to pull what's in you out of you. So in the African system, in our good African-centered schools, the most fundamental question being asked to the children is, what special gift did you bring from the Creator that you and you alone possess? There are many people who live frustrated lives because the thing that they could do best was never credentialized. I know a man, I grew up around a man who wanted to be a scientist, but there were no scientists in his family. He read something somewhere or seen something on television about a scientist. He said, I want to do that. Nobody ever supported him in doing that. His wife said, no, that's going to take too long. We got kids, we got to bring in money, put bread on the table, whatnot. He became a clerk in a department store. Poor man was frustrated every single day. You could see on his face how much he hated going to the department store. He would have loved going to a laboratory, but that was not put in, he was put into a box. Being a scientist was over here. He was locked in right here. So one of the reasons for African-centered schools is to ask that all-important question. You can ask your children, I always ask little kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Many times they'll tell me basketball player, football player. At that point, it's my job then to give them a couple other suggestions. Just, well, you might, want to do this. Well, have you seen that? Why don't you consider this over here? Now, I have no idea at that point where they're going to finally end up. But for many of them, that's the first time anybody ever suggested to them something other than preacher, teacher, doctor, lawyer, football player, basketball player. And many of them look at the basketball players and football players only because of the amount of money they make and the fame they have. So that what brother says is very, very important. If you ask the air to tell you what your direction is, it may not come through in human sentence, but sooner or later you're going to have some direction. The important thing is to recognize that you have a mission and that you're seeking it. If you seek the mission, you'll find it. If you don't know you have a mission, then you're in bad shape. If you never make any steps towards finding that mission, you're likewise in bad shape. Microphone, sister. Yes.
It's on.
I'd like to say that I can identify with this brother because I look at people, like I was talking to a patient yesterday. Soon after I get in the group, people find out I'm a nurse. Mm-hmm. I've been in the hospital for 38 years, and there's something wrong with that picture. And a light went off in me some time ago. And now, I love what I'm doing, but I'm an OBGYN nurse. But I keep telling, I met a Dr. Bike a year ago, and he said the very same thing, that our people need to realize who and what we are. And before he made the transition, he told me, I keep saying I need to complete, my degree. I need to get another degree. And he kept telling me, Juanita, you have everything that you need. Mm-hmm. He said, all you have to do is just step out. So I became fascinated with natural medicine, holistic health. And that's my pursuit now. Like I used to tell him all the time, I would go over his house, I want to be a healer. And now I realize I am a healer. Mm-hmm. I've been nursing, and I love it. But I realized that there was something in my spirit telling me that I was, more than what that piece of paper was saying, more, and I feel it. I tell people today, I feel for my people to be healthy today with a passion deep down in my soul, in my spirit, and it moves me. And I can't it just happens with me. And my godchildren, you know, they're fascinated with me. I finished studying under Dr. Africa, and I had to do 15 people. I ended up interviewing 30-some people. And I had enough, you know, I assessed people and evaluated them and told them what they could do to improve their health. And I had enough people to graduate myself from his class, and I passed on people and helped another person graduate. But it's having experiences like that help you realize your purpose in life, and people to help guide you realize your purpose and who and what you are will be put in your path, you know, like this brother. And it's something today that is very important for us to know our purpose here. And we all have a purpose. We're just not to exist from one day to the other. And I know, for me, there are never enough hours in a day, because I'm just so busy, you know, studying with Gerald, studying with Nana Kwesi, you know, in Black Man's class, realizing who and what I am. And in church, oh my goodness, they want to just put me in a box to teach Sunday school again. But they do not want me. I keep telling them, we miss you, Juanita. You know, you have got to teach the women's class. No, you're not ready for me, especially when you telling me women, you know, cannot preach. And, well, most people know after a while, I belong to United House of Prayer. Oh, my God. That's another story. But anyway, I'm enjoying this journey, and thank God for Brother Gerald.
Is that Daddy Grace Church?
Yes.
I made a mistake one day. We had a meeting at that church, and I was a little tired. I've been working all day long, and I almost sat down in that middle chair. But people started running from every direction. You don't sit in that chair. So, oh, it's fine. I'll stand. Pass it back to brother right here. Yeah.
I'd like just to add on to what has been said,
Yeah.
something you said earlier in terms
Okay.
of what the system does against us. Something happened recently. I think a lot of us saw it when the awards for the Oscars.
Yes.
And you were saying, I bring this up because you left one thing off when you were saying what
Okay.
we aspire to be.
Okay.
Doctor, preacher, etc.
Rap star.
Yeah, but coming out of a black community, let's be candid, and this is something that's very deep in our psyche. Young men want to be pimps.
All right.
And what I found when I grew up in a town like that,
Okay.
where even people with degrees on Saturdays, I may have shared this story at one of the famous jazz clubs in the city I grew up in, on 2 o'clock on Saturday, doctors, lawyers, and everyone would be in front of that jazz club because the two main pimps were going to pull up. And they were going to be in their cars, so you were wondering what kind of car they were going to have, and you knew they were going to be well dressed. I'm not talking about like rap stars. These were people dressed out the best stores.
They were
downtown.
clean.
They were clean. Okay, and so as a child, I stood there sometimes, and here's a person you've admired who had a degree, but he is in awe of this pimp who pulls up. There were two main pimps there, Billy James, it was James, and then Fast Black. And these names were like Jesus. What I found that we saw this on TV. What was the song that got the award?
So hard. It's harder here for a pimp.
Aren't we dealing with something subliminal here? Aren't the players playing the game? And also what I found when I moved to the city, there was a lady who had a PhD, and she put an article in the Washington Post about how deep in the psyche of black women, this thing of me wanting to pimp instead of a man who earns his living by his head. And I had a first-hand experience when I moved here. I had a cousin who was older than me, who had a number of female friends who were superintendents, principals, etc. Once a month, they had a party. And I was invited to the party through my cousin. Plus, I'll be honest, I dressed pimp style because I came out of a city where you almost had to. So I could go to the party, but they told me, said, now these other people that we know, the ones who were working at Howard University and etc., they can't come. They brought one pimp out of Detroit and another one from another city. And this was once a month. You got these principals, superintendents sitting there, and in a room, the men were nothing but hustlers. And this is what they were comfortable with. And a woman wrote about how deep in our psyche this is. And I got a godson now who's dealing with it. Our children are dealing with this. That if you don't dress a certain way, then certain women don't want you. This is the reality in our community. That's the reason why I commend you on what you're doing, because we have to discuss this and do it in an open-minded way in order to overcome that and help ourselves and people like you. You said, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a pimp? When I came up, that was the thing to be. Either you're going to be a pimp or a reverend. You can say that he's hustling too.
Yeah. Different hustle, yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make that point about how the media, and this is what we have to look at, Murdoch's media, the right wing, etc., and how they're playing such a vicious game on us. And I don't think we can continue to sit and laugh about these things, because this is real.
And people just insult us, and we applaud the insult. You know, I was not real happy that the top song would be "It's Harder Here for a Pimp." Quincy Jones has written music also. You know, that's not our first contribution to the Emmys, but many of our people will think that's the first time black folks won an Emmy. It's harder here for a pimp. You know.
I just wanted to say, you know, regarding the brother, I've heard two things that I think you are. I think you're seeking after the truth. So, you know, that's something that you are. That's your purpose. And your purpose is your father. I mean, I heard two things right there. You're raising two daughters, and you're seeking after the truth. And that right there is defines you. That's an identity right there. And that's what I heard come out of you. I didn't even know if you heard yourself say it, but
and by the things you say to your children, without even knowing it, you'll strengthen them. I think I've told the story here before. My youngest son read the book Iceman Inheritance by Michael Bradley. Probably not 3,000 people in the country read that book. He wrote a paper on it he was 12 years old. He was probably in the 8th or 9th grade, somewhere around there. And after he wrote the paper, I asked him what he got. He told me B+. I said, how do you feel about the B+? He says, all right. He said, I could have got an A if the teacher understood the book. Okay. So, you know, that showed me that he'd come to understand his position relative to the world he lives in. You know, and that in and of itself takes out some of the frustration. Dr. Edwin J. Nichols talked about the fact that he knows he would never be made the head of NIH. So by the time he moves to the top of whatever bureau he's in, he starts planning and packing his stuff up because he knows rather than make him the head, they're going to move him. But since he already knows that, he's all right. There's a story by Camus, Albert Camus, French writer, called The Myth of Sisyphus. And Sisyphus is the person who is chained to the rock, and he forever has to push the rock up the hill, and he knows when the rock gets to the top of the hill, it's going to fall back down again, go back down and get it and push it back up again. Camus says, but the way he looks at Sisyphus has made up in his mind that I'm going to push, every time it goes down, I'm going down and get it and bring it back up. Sooner or later, either me or the rock going to give up. And it ain't going to be me. So Camus says, in the last lines, he says, I see Sisyphus as actually being quite happy. You know, I've taken on missions like that. And sometimes what happens, you'll have one thing in mind, and there benefits other places. As the verse in the Bible says, they meant for me as evil, but behold, God meant for me as good. I thought, for instance, I'm sitting here today in the William E. Dorr Public Charter School. I followed William E. Dorr as the National Executive Director by fraternity. Brother Dorr served 30 years. I went there with every intention of serving 30 years like Brother Dorr did, and to retire from that. Had all these plans about where I was going to take the fraternity. After a dozen years, I couldn't take it anymore. Folks were driving me crazy. I recognized to save my life, I had to get away from those Negroes. I resigned. Oh, I'll tell you, the black organizations right now are hotbeds of confusion because white corporate mentality has come into all of our black organizations. We used to operate horizontally, now we're operating vertically. People who are lifelong friends in the fraternity grew up together, because of an election, don't even speak anymore. And that's typical of all black fraternities. It's typical of black doctors, black lawyers. A number of years ago, there was a shooting in the Black Baptist Convention. One of the ministers shot, the other one dead, in the Baptist Convention. Now, so I quit. And what motivated me into getting this whole thing, I had to know why it was at a time, in that time, 1990, when black folks had bigger cars, bigger homes, could fly first class on airplanes, why we spend all our time fighting each other. I had to know why at that time we moved into such a cycle. So I stayed home for 2 years. I couldn't get a job because heading a social service organization during George Bush I's term, we were in a recession, they called it. It was a depression as far as I'm concerned. Black folks in depression and white folks going into recession. So the social service agency was not available. I sat home and read 2 years. Luckily my wife makes plenty of money, so it's fine. Now, that's how I got involved in this. In trying to find out what was wrong with my fraternity, I came to find out what was wrong with all black people. I wasn't seeking that. I was looking for something narrow. I found something wide. Now, I've been on WL now ever since the mid-'80s. As I say very often on the air, I do not have a master's degree or a PhD. I've got a bachelor's in liberal arts, chemistry, and mathematics. Consistently, folks call me doc or doctor. Now, that's good and that's bad. It's a mark of respect. And what they're saying is that they value what I try to give to them in the same way they would value anyone else who is a PhD, most of whom are supposed to be doing the same thing, but are not talking to them at all. Unfortunately, most of the PhD African-centered scholars talk primarily to each other. That's why I do this, because them talking to each other like preaching to the choir. You know, we got to start talking to folks who have not had the information so they can pass it on. Yes, sir.
You say that these PhD scholars seem to be talking to each other. That's the impression I get out of this book we read.
Okay.
That this book is not to the general population of African American people, basically because of the words that are used.
That's great.
Like
Yeah.
I told you when I first had it when he first put it out and he signed it. But I think I looked at it, read it for about 15 minutes, and I didn't pick it up again for 20 years. I don't know how long it's been out.
Yeah.
But one thing, when you said we're going to use it, I said, well, I got to get a dictionary because I can't read it. I can't read no more than 3 or 4 lines, and I don't know what he's talking about.
You think that was bad? You try to read Urugu. There's some passages in Urugu I have to read 10 times.
I wasn't sure I
read 10
spoke
times
English.
just to think about it for a
this
while.
book.
And read it again. You know.
I mean, I was like, this is English? What, you know, so, but I mean, it's good, but like you say, I'm sure this could be even broken down, as the brother says, so the ghost can get it, meaning so that the common person can get the basics of it and then grow further.
Well, that's what you're going to have to do.
I'm going to do it too.
Yes, with the links. Yes, yes. Mr. Grandma?
What
But
I'd like to,
you can aspire to it. You can aspire to it. When Dr. Finch starts talking, white folks shut up. Good. they can't deal with him. Good.
I'd just like to speak to your point in terms of the book being challenging. I found it to be that also, but there are tools
Yes.
that you can get locally that will help you. Two things in terms of dictionaries. I would get the Latin dictionary. You can get a dictionary, small dictionary,
Yes.
from English to Latin, and also French, because you'll notice he uses a lot of French phrases
Yes.
in there. You know, that's the academic world.
Yes.
That's the Western world. You're going to see the French phrases. So if we know that, then I think this is what we need to do. And you don't need somebody with a PhD to tell you to do that. I think we can share that amongst ourselves, and you can learn from that. So when I read, I keep those beside me. The other tools that you will find helpful would be Massey's works. One of Massey's, one of his key books to help you understand what Finch is doing is his book on lectures. It's a small paperback. And at the back of that book, he has a breakdown of terms that you will see.
I'll bring that next week. Yes.
And then the other one would be the, what's it, Ancient Light of Egypt? Light of the World.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's a 2-volume piece. If you get that, it will help you. That's dense, as you know.
Oh, yes.
But you will find things in his lectures and in those 2 volumes which will help you to read this.
What's the name of the last one?
Ancient Egypt, Light of the World.
It's a 2-volume piece by Massey.
It's by Massey. It was edited by Finch. It was republished by Finch.
And it costs about I just bought it, about $60.
For the 2-volume?
It's at $70. At the bookstore on Georgia Avenue. And if the brother doesn't have it, he'll order it for you. House of Kemet.
And one other book that they'll mention in there, I'll just like to do this
Sure,
and finish,
sure.
and that is the Book of the Dead, Coming Forth by Day. That's the first Bible, really.
Written by, a lot of people write that.
When I talk with you next time, I'll give you the name because there are several, but I think his name starts with a B.
Budge is the one that Budge.
Yes. Yeah. Now you'll be somewhat frustrated because Massey and Finch will reference that book, but you will go into that book and you'll find certain sections aren't there. And it's my understanding that's the section that the Masons had.
Okay.
So don't get too frustrated when you're reading and it says, well, go to the Book of the Dead, chapter such and such. And you'll find that the book that you will have will not have certain chapters. But it still will be a good tool. That's all I want to share with you. So
And
that
it's
you can
available
read it.
somewhere.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it, but like you say, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, you go to a big bookstore, and a lot of different people claiming, I guess they have some excerpts from it, so they put on there.
There's different translations, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
For what Finch is doing, get Budge's copy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Budge is a yellow copy. It's a yellow back by Budge.
Mhm.
And there's also a brown one. But both of those books on the Egyptian Book of the Dead, both of those are in the house of Kemet.
On Georgia Avenue.
And the other one is a brown one because on Monday nights in Black Man's class, that's the 2 we reference.
Okay. Thank you.
And House of Kemet is on Georgia Avenue. Harvard's on the north end, and what's the? No, it's above. It's be a J. I Street. Be I name. HI. A B C D E F G. Be G Street. Gresham between Gresham and Harvard.
Gresham and Harvard.
Yeah, between Gresham and Harvard. On the left-hand side is heading north of Georgia Avenue. The last part of what I was saying is that, so I understand why they call me Doc. At the same time, that's the system I'm trying to fight against. What I'm trying to convince them is that that terminology was put in place by the European Academy as a way of shutting the door and being a gatekeeper to say only certain people can go through here. I'm trying to say to them, if you study and take time, you can understand nuclear physics. If you have average intelligence, you can understand anything you want to understand. If you get your dictionary and your thesaurus, and you go through Finch's book, you write down the words you don't know, you start memorizing those Latin prefixes and suffixes, all kinds of stuff will start falling out at you. Mediterranean, Medi means between, terra means earth. Mediterranean is the water between the 2 pieces of earth.